Coming up on our newscast tonight. In his weekly meeting with top aides, President Moon Jae-in highlighted the need to be ready for meetings with his North Korean counterpart, which could be held at any time should the need arises. Key officials from Washington and Pyongyang continue to hold meetings. The chosen experts are likely to have ironed out details for the summit, including denuclearization and a security guarantee. In the final session of the first half of the year, lawmakers in Parliament managed to get a lot of work done. While they passed quite a number of bills, they clashed over the details of the one linked to the Panmunjom Declaration. News Center begins now. It's 8 p.m. here in Korea, coming to you live from our studio in Seoul. This is Arirang News Center. Welcome to our program. I'm Daniel Choi. President Moon Jae-in stressed the importance of being able to meet more easily and casually with his North Korean counterpart, Kim Jong-un. Just like they did over the weekend, the Liberal leader ordered his aides to devise necessary measures, as there will be much more such instances in the future. Our Chief Cheong-ade correspondent Moon Gon-young starts us off.
위원장은 하나가 10초 동안 깜짝 제대로 된 운전 연주를 잘 못해서 미안합니다. 김정은 위원장은 책임자가 받았어.
Once unimaginable. In fact, up until this past weekend, that is, this kind of a casual meeting is what the rest of us may witness more often in the future between leaders of two sides separated by the most heavily fortified border in the world, or is at least what South Korean President Moon Jae-in hopes for. Speaking to his top aides 2 days after his unannounced face-to-face with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un on the northern side of the demilitarized zone, the border that separates the two Koreas, President Moon ordered necessary arrangements to be made for future meetings of such, as he plans to make these somewhat like a normal routine between friends.
이번 남북 정상회담에서 무엇보다 의미가 컸던 것은 남북의 정상이 긴급한 현안을 논의하기 위해 번잡한 절차와 형식을 생략하고 일상적인 만남처럼 쉽게 연락하고 쉽게 약속하고 쉽게 만났다는 사실입니다.
The South Korean president asked his aides to come up with measures, keeping in mind that similar instances could happen in the future, to ensure that there are no gap in the line of military command, keeping National Security Council members on standby, making sure there are balanced on-spot media coverage, as well as notifying related countries before and after such meetings.
남북 간의 지난 판문점 회담이나 올해 가을에 예정되어 있는 평양 회담처럼 격식을 갖추어서 정기적인 회담을 갖는 것은 남북 관계 발전을 위해 매우 중요한 일입니다.
Now, the South Korean president, who's long held such vision, believes what will really expedite the advancement of cross-border relations are these impromptu meetings between the two leaders on either side of the border on needs basis. Moon Gon-young, Arirang News, The Blue House.
Meanwhile, North Korea and the U.S. appear to be back at work making preparations for their summit. Already a number of working-level talks are held between the two sides. Lee Ji-won zooms in on what could be covered during these meetings.
It's the second day of secretive meetings between the U.S. and North Korea on the northern side of Panmunjom. The delegations are reportedly led by the former U.S. ambassador to South Korea and former nuclear negotiator Sung Kim, and from North Korea, Choi Sun-hee, the regime's vice foreign minister and a former director of her ministry's North American department. Both are experts in their fields, so pundits expect that they'll discuss the agenda and details of the Pyongyang-Washington summit. And on the topic of denuclearization, what should be the first step?
We have a basic idea of what the end point of Pyongyang's denuclearization would look like if a deal is reached, but we don't yet have a clear picture of the first steps for it, and that's vital for building trust. So the US could ask the North to take actions that clearly show its determination, which would also need to be reciprocated.
In fact, Japan's Kyodo News Agency reported Monday, citing U.S. officials, that Washington is asking Pyongyang to first transfer the 20 nuclear warheads it is believed to have to somewhere outside of its borders as soon as possible. While that request could seem similar to the so-called Libya model, Trump had said that he would not take that approach and instead focus on his Trump model. Trump last week had also for the first time hinted at the possibility of accepting a phased-in disarmament for North Korea. And some experts say this new Trump model is what might have been discussed at Panmunjom.
The North has protested strongly against having to give up its nukes first, which could have been one of the reasons it issued those aggressive statements 2 weeks ago. But with the two sides now sitting down to talk again, it's likely that the North accepted the U.S. request, but also demanded, among other things, that it be done progressively.
Meanwhile, preparations in terms of technical issues seem to be in the works over in Singapore. A high-ranking North Korean official, Kim Chang-sun, who heads the regime's State Affairs Commission Secretariat, was spotted at Beijing Airport Monday morning and is believed to have taken a Singaporean flight in the afternoon, according to local sources. With an advanced team of White House and State Department officials reportedly led by Deputy Chief of Staff Joe Hagan, confirmed to have left for Singapore on Sunday, it's likely that the two sides will meet at the summit venue. And since they'll be in the host city, experts says it's likely that they'll discuss protocol and details of the schedule. Lee Ji-won, Arirang News.
A top official at North Korea's embassy in Singapore spoke positively about last weekend's second inter-Korean summit. In an encounter with reporters today, the embassy's first secretary, Lee Byung-duk, dodged most questions about working-level talks between Pyongyang and Washington. But when asked for his opinion on the second inter-Korean summit, the diplomat called it an historic one that's very important for better bilateral relations, as well as for peace and security on the peninsula. North Korea can be a great economic nation one day. That's coming from Donald Trump, who made similar comments last week ahead of his sit-down with President Moon Jae-in. Watchers say the U.S. commander-in-chief appears to be ready to offer economic rewards to Pyongyang in exchange for complete denuclearization. Kim Yo-sun shares with us his remarks.
President Trump says he believes North Korea will one day be a great economic and financial nation, adding it has brilliant potential. This was what he wrote on his Twitter page on Sunday, as he confirmed Washington and Pyongyang are holding working-level talks in North Korea to coordinate the upcoming summit between the two countries. President Trump also said North Korean leader Kim Jong-un agrees with him about North Korea's potential for a brighter future, and it will happen. He made similar remarks while answering reporters' questions ahead of last week's summit at the White House with South Korean President Moon Jae-in. Trump elaborated that South Korea has achieved remarkable growth backed by the trillions of dollars of aid provided by Washington, and North Korea can do the same, highlighting that they are the same people. He also insisted the safety of Kim's regime will be guaranteed if Pyongyang abandons its nuclear weapons. Pundits say President Trump's remarks signal he's ready to offer massive economic rewards to Pyongyang in exchange for its complete, verifiable, and irreversible denuclearization. Kim Yo-sun, Arirang News.
North Korea seeks to go shoulder to shoulder consistently with the international community to build a peaceful world free of nuclear weapons. That's the message conveyed by the regime through an op-ed in the state-run Rodong-Sinmun newspaper regarding its recent demolition of the Punggye-ri nuclear test site. It goes on to read, the international media were eager to report about the event and the world praised the move, emphasizing Pyongyang was transparent and sincere in showing its will to halt nuclear tests. It added this gesture confirms North Korea's stance of keeping in close contact with the rest of the world to secure global peace and stability. High-level inter-Korean talks, originally set for earlier this month, was called off by Pyongyang last minute. It was revived by the leaders of the two Koreas when they met over the weekend. Let's turn to our Oh Jung-hee for the list of possible agenda and delegations for that event.
A month has passed since April's Inter-Korean Summit, and the first round of high-level talks between the two Koreas will finally take place on Friday. The objective, to discuss measures to implement the summit agreement called the Panmunjom Declaration. The talks were originally scheduled to take place a couple of weeks ago, and each of Seoul and Pyongyang's delegations were finalized before the talks were abruptly called off by North Korea. It remains to be seen whether major changes will be made to the list of delegates, but it's widely thought they'll be similar, if not the same. The delegations were to meet at the Peace House on the South Korean side of the border village of Panmunjom. Prior to the cancellation, North Korea said it was sending a 5-member delegation led by Lee Sung-kwon, the head of the North's Inter-Korean Affairs Committee, while South Korea also had a 5-member delegation led by Unification Minister Cho Myung-kyun. Ministers in charge of railways and sports were included from the North Korean side, while Seoul also had vice ministers of land and culture. So attention falls on whether these delegates will stay for possible discussions on connecting railways between the two Koreas in forming joint teams for upcoming international sports events. Forestation projects in North Korea could also be discussed, as South Korea originally included the Vice Minister of the Forest Service in its delegation. Meanwhile, Seoul and Pyongyang are expected to try and set dates for inter-Korea military and Red Cross talks, as well as establish dialogue channels for each. Holding joint events on major dates shared by the two Koreas is likely to be discussed as well. Coming right up is June 15th, the date on which South and North Korea issued their first joint statement in 2000. 오정희, Arirang News.
Rival parties managed to get several dozens of bills passed today, including a revision to the minimum wage law, but were unable to vote on a resolution supporting the Inter-Korean Summit Declaration. Next on their plate, re-electing lawmakers to key parliamentary posts, but that process is likely to be put off until after the June elections, raising concerns of a parliamentary vacuum. Kim Min-ji has the latest from the National Assembly.
Rival parties failed to hold a vote on a resolution in support of the Inter-Korean Summit Agreement, called the Panmunjom Declaration, during a plenary session on Monday. They had initially agreed to do so, however, were unable to narrow their differences over the specifics. The ruling Democratic Party of Korea wanted to use the phrase realization of a Korean peninsula free of nuclear weapons through complete denuclearization. However, the main opposition Liberty Korea party called for a stronger statement, the complete, verifiable, and irreversible dismantlement of North Korea's nuclear program. The resolution will have to wait for some time to be passed, as Monday was the final plenary session of the first half of the 20th National Assembly. But lawmakers did manage to make some progress, passing over 80 pending bills. Although most of them passed smoothly without much opposition, an amendment to the minimum wage bill was approved amid heated debate. The revision calls for bonuses and benefits of a certain size to be calculated as part of the minimum wage. The proposal was met with resistance, though, some arguing that it undermines the effect of this year's minimum pay hike of over 16%. Lawmakers will now conclude the first half of Parliament's 4-year term on Tuesday and have a lot of re-electing to do for key parliamentary posts, including National Assembly Speaker. It's been customary for the party with the largest number of seats in Parliament to choose the Speaker, and the ruling party has selected a candidate, although a vote has yet to be held. However, the main opposition party wants to put off the vote until after the by-elections that will be held on June 13th, as there could be a shift in which party holds the most seats. The ruling party currently holds 118 seats, while the main opposition has 113. It seems that for the next few weeks or so, the National Assembly will be without a speaker, and with the terms of most key positions in Parliament expiring on Tuesday, there are concerns that the legislature could be headed for paralysis. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Going back to President Moon Jae-in's weekly meeting with top aides, they managed to discuss domestic issues as well, calling for greater governmental efforts to boost the economy and create more jobs. For details, let's turn to our Hwang Ho-jun.
The president shared some stats with his aides during their Monday meeting, some positive, but of them one not. First, overall economic conditions in the first quarter improved. The economy grew more than 1% from the previous quarter, and household income, compared to a year before, rose 3.7%. However, President Moon also noted that income distribution has in fact worsened, as job growth slowed down and household income fell for the lower 20% bracket.
경제에 관한 거시지표와 국민들의 체감 사이에 큰 간극이 있을 수 있다는 뜻입니다.
President Moon said it's time for a checkup on his administration's key economic policies of creating jobs and income-driven growth. He did acknowledge that such policies and goals will require some patience to see them implemented in reality. While the president said that the government shouldn't obsess over short-term results, he did insist on the necessity of winning public sympathy to make sure that the government's key policies are going on the right direction. For now, the Liberal leader urged his staff to focus on the big picture and push ahead with the policies to fruition.
최저임금 인상에 따른 일자리 안정자금 집행, 청년 일자리 추경, 노사정 사회적 대타협 등 금년도 경제정책의 큰 방향을 흔들림 없이 추진해 주기 바랍니다. 아울러 경제 성장의 혜택으로부터 소외된 저소득 국민들에 대한 정책을 강화해 주기 바랍니다.
The South Korean president also ordered his top aides to reinforce the government's policies for low-income citizens, including the elderly and the unemployed, whom he said are alienated from the benefits of economic growth. He also called for a comprehensive review of the administration's policies to support citizens who failed in starting businesses or working for themselves so they can make a comeback by strengthening the social safety net or by helping them find work again. An emergency economy meeting will convene on Tuesday. Instead of hastily coming up with a cure-it-all plan, President Moon urged the government to rather focus on getting an accurate picture of the nation's economic reality. Hwang Ho-jun, Arirang News.
The government is also pushing forward with its plans for innovation-led growth by collecting public opinion on easing regulations in new industries. Key officials for economic affairs met on Monday to review the progress of the administration's growth initiatives. The finance ministry is seeking to reform regulations that hinder experimentation with next-gen technologies by communicating with the public and related companies. The specific platform for the process has not been revealed yet. The session was arranged after President Moon Jae-in pledged to boost innovation-led growth and stressed that speed is of the essence. Korea's corporate regulator, the Fair Trade Commission, is going to be closely watching companies making changes to their corporate structure in order to benefit smaller shareholders. That's according to the head of the FTC, Kim Sang-jo, who made the comments after Hyundai Motor Group canceled a shareholder meeting because of opposition to a plan to strengthen the transfer of control over the firm from father to son. The resistance came partially from institutional investors and the world's largest activist fund, Elliott Management, who highlighted such a move would only help the succession plan and not benefit minority shareholders. Speaking before a parliamentary committee, the FTC chair announced he is pushing for a government-wide effort to level the playing field in a changing financial market. Last month, a Samsung Securities employee mistakenly paid out 2.8 billion shares in dividends. In response to the so-called Fat Finger error, Korea's financial bodies plan to roll out new trading measures to prevent similar mishaps. Oh Soo-young explains further.
Korea's market authorities will enforce more stringent trading measures on securities firm employees selling their company stocks. The Financial Services Commission and other key regulators on Monday announced a set of measures to prevent erroneous transactions and regain the trust of investors after Samsung Securities Fat Finger incident last month. Samsung Securities accidentally paid out 2.8 billion shares in dividends to its employees. This caused massive market confusion as 5 million Go shares worth $184 million were subsequently sold off before the system was fixed. Regulators have largely blamed the lax monitoring system, which failed to prevent a large-scale sell-off of stocks that only existed on paper. In order to prevent similar accidents, regulators plan to require securities firms to adopt a real-time monitoring system rather than managing the balance of stocks after market close. This new real-time system discloses the balance and trade volume of stocks at the time of trading, which will help to make sure the transactions are legitimate. An alarm will be raised on orders that exceed the approved ratio of tradable stocks, and financial bodies will have to approve large-scale orders that exceed the ratio, as well as potentially erroneous orders. And an emergency button system will allow the security firm to pull the brakes on any faulty transactions. Securities firms will also have to improve the way they manage their employee stock ownership system, separating the processing of cash dividends and stock dividends. Authorities also plan to expand short-selling opportunities for individual investors, as there's criticism that institutional investors mostly benefit from the system. Regulators plan to roll out the measures in phases from the third quarter of this year. 오수영, Arirang News.
Moving on to other stories now, Lee Myung-bak did not appear in court today for his second trial hearing over corruption charges, citing poor health. After attending the first one last week, the former president said he would not be attending any more hearings other than those that absolutely require his presence. Lee's attorneys have submitted a formal request for a trial in absentia. The disgraced leader was detained in March on a dozen corruption charges, including bribery and embezzlement. He denies all the charges. Last year, South Korea's land area increased by 24 square kilometers. That's about 8 times the size of Yeouido Island. According to the Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transport, almost 16 square kilometers of that expansion came from a reclamation project in Haenam County, Jeollanam-do Province. The development of multi-technology valley in Gyeonggi-do Province chipped in another 2.8 square kilometers. As for the rest, mostly due to registration of previously unlisted lands. Over the last decade, the amount of agricultural land and forests shrunk, while in contrast, urban areas and the amount used for transport infrastructure have grown. Global K-pop sensation BTS reached the top of the Billboard 200 this week. Their new album, Love Yourself Tear, officially released on May 18th, became the first K-pop album to top that U.S. chart. It's also the first time in 12 years an album with songs in a foreign language to achieve this feat. Just last week, during a press briefing, the boys expressed their wish to someday land first place on the Billboard Hot 100 and on the Billboard 200. The latter ranks the most popular album of the week in America based on album and track sales, as well as streaming records. Time to turn to Michelle Bach at the Weather Center for the updates you need. Michelle, it's still only May, but it felt like the middle of summer. I do hope it doesn't get too hot too soon.
Well, Daniel, we'll have some intense sun again tomorrow, but although it'll be cloudier than today, the UV rays will be strong, so try not to be out in the sun for too long without any sun protection. On the ground, it'll be hot, but in the atmosphere, a cold front is expected to pass by, making things very, very unstable. So there will be chances of sudden showers in places in the afternoon through the evening with loud thunder and lightning at times. Taking a look at our readings for tomorrow, Seoul will wake up to 18 degrees Celsius. Daegu and Gyeonggi begins at 18 and 17 degrees. The daily highs over in Seoul will hit up to 25 degrees, while Gwangju and Busan peaks up to 29 and 24 degrees. After tomorrow, and as we begin the month of June, we'll start to get the full summer heat, boosting the daily highs into the near 30s. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That's all we could squeeze into our newscast tonight. Wherever you may be tuning in from, thank you for staying with us.